Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session hosted now by Qualtrics on reimagining and transforming your contact center into a profit and growth center. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our speaker, Leonie Brown. Leonie is the head CX scientist at Qualtrics, specializing in CX, research methodologies, and modernizing the contact center. Leonie has worked with hundreds of brands to design, implement, and optimize their CX programs using her vast amounts of experience to help brands turn happy customers into higher revenue and lower churn. Lainey is published in the likes of Forbes, Retail CX, Customer Experience Magazine, and is a 2020 Customer Centricity Awards judge. Before I hand over to Lainey, I wanted to take the chance to introduce the Qualtrics Digital Dream Team. Lockdown has hit again, and Qualtrics are the experience management company, so we're here to make your experience better. From donating to a charity on your behalf, to sending a gift to a friend or family member that you haven't seen in a while, or even helping you keep the kids entertained, the Qualtrics Digital Dream Team are here to help. Visit our virtual booth and click through to the Dream Team icon, submit your request, and see if we are able to fulfill. Over to you, Lainey.
Thank you ever so much, Claire. And hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm really, really delighted that you've chosen to join us for this session on reimagining the contact centre. And so for folks who aren't already familiar with Qualtrics, I just wanted to spend a moment introducing us. So we are the experience management company, as Claire just said, and we concentrate on these 4 pillars of experience: customer, employee, product experience, and of course, brand experience, all powered by our advanced analytics platform. And so when we think about experience measurement, which is what we do, these 4 pillars connect together. And of course, gaining feedback from all of these areas sits within a much larger ecosystem, as you can see around the edge. And so we intersect and integrate with lots and lots of other systems for lots of different reasons, of course. And so when we think about what we do, we deliver a system of action. So we help you measure and baseline the experiences that you're providing. We help you predict and prioritize those insights. And of course, it's nothing if you don't act upon it. So we help you act and optimize how you deliver experiences, whether that's to your employees, to your customers, or whether it's the larger pieces of what products and services should you focus on and overall brand values. The idea is you can measure something all day, but if you're not able to gain insight and then act upon that insight, the whole exercise isn't really very meaningful. So that's what Qualtrics does. I've been at Qualtrics a number of years now, and I specialize particularly in contact center. So here's a stat to kick us off. 78% of customers say they would permanently change. They have permanently changed the way they felt about a brand based on a single interaction with that organization's contact center. That's huge. And given the challenges of the last few months, which we're now in the long run for, contact center, like never before, is the front line. Before they were part of the front line, now they're it. So you're more important than it's ever been before to get it right, and the stakes are higher. So what are the big challenges that we see? So it can be very difficult to tailor the support that you're offering. Frontline attrition is a big deal to all of us, and we know that. It's probably the single biggest cost drag that we have to deal with. And particularly thinking about operational metrics, a lot of people have had a scorecard in place for ages, but haven't really revisited it. But also thinking about operational data, things like efficiency, calls handled, waiting time, handle time, things like financial numbers. Those tell you what happened, but they don't tell you why. And that's a key part of measuring experience, is finding the why. So we call that X data here at Qualtrics, experience data. O data is everything else from your financial system, a reservation system, your booking systems, your shipping and delivery and merchandising and digital analytics. That's all operational data. So we help you find the why. Then experience gaps that go undetected because of siloed data. That's pretty important. And silos kind of challenge us, that they're really difficult to break down. So again, the more you can address that, the more important it is. What if customer care knew about an issue before it became a problem? What if you could provide insights to the rest of your organization? So in some ways, this is an opportunity for you to be valued more highly and not just be the place that people come when somebody says sorry. Then traditional voice of the customer tools, sometimes they rely only on solicited feedback. So that's literally asking a customer, how did we do? Now that's really important, obviously, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. So we also think a lot about what we call implicit feedback, where I didn't ask you explicitly. I learn about your behavior. I get feedback based on how you behave. That can include things like voice analytics. It could include things like Internet of Things. So we can learn a lot more about feedback over and above explicit data. And then very difficult to deliver this amazing digital service, right? That so many companies got caught short early on this year, that they planned to make a load of investments in digital. Suddenly the need was there. And they've had, staff out sick. They've had contact centers closed down because of lockdown. Suddenly, delivering that digital service became a huge challenge because we want to push people to self-service if we can, just to try and preserve our contact center bandwidth. Now, as we think about customer care experiences that drive business impact, these are the key outcomes. So reducing the cost of acquiring new customers and keeping support costs low, increasing perception of your brand and loyalty towards it, and of course, improving the engagement of your agents or your advisors, whatever it is that you call them, your frontline key staff, and keeping them engaged and retained. So those are the three big outcomes, and we look at these in terms of impact levers. So if we can improve overall support experience, actually both your customers and your employees benefit. If we can improve their productivity and retention, the customers benefit because they notice, and it means that your agents are generally going to be happier. If we focus on that productivity, we help them to do their jobs better. Improving digital customer service isn't just about call deflection. That's very old school. It's just about saving money. But we know sometimes that saving money sometimes costs you money in the long run. So it's about understanding which customers need to stay in the digital space, and we want to direct them to self-serve, not because it's cheaper, although that's a benefit. Sometimes it's what they need. They just want to self-serve because it's simpler. Thinking about accelerating resolution time. Old school, we all talk about average handle time a lot. That's really important. But what's super important is resolution ratio. So time taken to get that issue resolved. Improving customer retention benefits all sorts of things, but it's interesting. If you improve agent retention, customer satisfaction typically goes up because customers love to deal with tenured agents. They love to deal with somebody who knows what they're talking about, and they get that sense pretty easily. And then, of course, for some of you, increasing the ability to upsell and cross-sell. It's not everyone in customer care who has this opportunity, but when you do, you have this unprecedented level of trust that you're looking after a customer, but also potentially going to be able to generate some extra revenue. That's something that everybody's got to be a bit careful about, that line that they walk, but you do it well, and it can be absolutely extraordinary. One major retailer that I've been speaking with lately, so they're a major European retailer, their year-on-year revenue performance has gone up 88%. And that's because all of their retail stores closed over lockdown. And so actually their agents, because they do a lot of empathy training and they're just really good at identifying opportunity, massively increased their revenue. So sometimes, we have to look at things as occasionally a bit of an opportunity. So where have we all struggled? Now, these are things that we've heard specifically from customers lately, and in polls that we've been running, is adapting our knowledge base for COVID era challenges. Suddenly we needed a whole ton of extra articles writing, and we needed to make sure the knowledge base was up to date. Balancing our service capacity and increased operational stress. So one major utility provider that I've been talking with, their incoming traffic surged 300%. but their ability to deal with it went down by over 50% because they lost 2 of their contact centers in India due to lockdown. So it was a big deal to them. Managing a remote workforce, and that's a big deal. Lots of people have tinkered with remote working a lot, different companies to quite a big extent, but this is like a huge lift, and we know that everyone's been facing it. Prioritizing emerging signals. So how do you identify an issue before it becomes a challenge, before it becomes a problem? And then knowing which customers to recover and how. And again, some people don't like to talk about it, but some customers are frequent flyers. They're actually really high cost to serve in relation to what they spend with you. And providing this seamless digital and self-service experience that when we look at digital leakage, when it's high, that means your contact center costs are going to absolutely rocket because people try to self-serve, they give up, and they trigger a live message chat or a phone call or even an email, or they go to social media, and suddenly the cost of engaging with them has just jumped up. So one of the things that I'm working on, particularly this next year, is digital to human handoff. So if we can, we self-serve. If we can't, or we've identified that customer as like, no, we would prefer to engage with them because they're premium, for example, that handoff is as seamless as it can possibly be, whether that's chatbot to human live chat or even FAQ article through to contact center. There's lots of different connections that go across here, and we're working really hard on making that seamless so that the agent that ends up dealing with it, ideally, we want them to have the color and the context of what it was this customer was even trying to do, so they don't have to explain themselves all over again. And then last piece, getting your platform in place that integrates your workflows. So you don't get, the doom of alt tab, swivel chair, 3 monitors in front of you. Like, how can we help reduce that lift for an agent of dealing with too many different pieces of the puzzle? And of course, it's got to be flexible because things change. And these days they change pretty regularly. So there's 3 kind of cornerstones in terms of rethinking. So the first is rethinking the agent. And that's understanding what keeps them engaged. And thinking about what keeps people engaged, we actually know it's not money. And this is not new news. There's been research going back on this a good decade now, is that people do care about money, but they also care about their job. And I'm just going to leave this as a nugget. A piece of research that we ran about 12 months ago here at Qualtrics is that we ask a lot of these questions as kind of a pulse, and we go to about 5,000 employees across Europe, all different walks of life, different industries. And we ask them, do you have faith in your leadership to make the right decision? Do you have faith in your company to a greater or lesser extent? But we actually found one of the biggest indicators of engagement in their job role is, do you look forward to going to work? And the reason behind that is it's not about the company, it's about me. So if I don't enjoy my day-to-day job because I don't get on with my manager, it doesn't matter how great, or I don't get on with my colleagues, or I think it's too hard, there's too many systems, it's too much to cope with, we get too many calls coming in and I can't deal with the volume, whatever that is, it doesn't matter how great the brand is or how well you pay them, they won't stay in the long term. So that we found that was a really critical driver question, is, do you look forward to going to work? Because it's just about them and the day-to-day. It's not about being proud to work for the company or whether you have faith in the leadership. Those are important too, but we found the biggest indicator was looking forward to going to work. Identifying high-value interactions. So in customer care, there's a lot of low-value interactions. What time does the store open? Where's my stuff? So, I like the abbreviation WISMO, where is my order? That typically drives, in retail particularly, 30 to 50% of incoming traffic is where's my stuff? So for agents, this isn't high value, it's low value because it's incredibly repetitive. So how can we help them identify and feed them these high value interactions so they get a sense of, I'm actively contributing, rather than I might as well be a robot sitting here answering repeated questions. So identifying high value interactions is also paired with identifying your high value performers. So the more we can take of this low value stuff off agents, the more they will be engaged. Bi-directional feedback. It's really important to hear from customers, right? You should also hear from your front line. And typically that's not very formalized. So listen to what they say about, well, this should be self-service. I don't understand why it's coming through on calls. Listen to, I've now seen 3 customers with this same problem, but providing a formalized mechanism that nonetheless functions a little bit like social media, that everybody gets some input and it finally does make its way through to senior management. And coaching. Now, coaching automation doesn't mean robotic. It's human-led, but data-driven. So being able to provide fantastic data to your team leaders and your middle management can drive a whole new level of great coaching. So it's important that they get those insights regularly, that they are consistent, and that they are actionable. So how you give that feedback is how you coach people. Rethinking metrics. This is the great one. Like, everyone's got an opinion on metrics. Yes, they should be forensic for customer care. We like that. We like that you can evaluate things in 6 different directions, but how do you focus? And for agents, it's actually more about the relative than it is the absolute. So when we think about the direction of travel, are things improving or are they worsening? It's more about the trend over time than just looking at a metric in the moment. So I talk about scorecards with organizations a lot, and I'd say there's a ton of overlap, but it's interesting sometimes where there isn't. So I know that just talking about efficiency, just talking about handle time and volumes is only going to help you drive down cost to serve. But if it comes at a cost of CSAT, then maybe that's not a great decision. So there's a lot of things where we need to walk the line of looking at what trade-offs there are. I could pay a higher price in terms of salary and maybe get more senior agents. But if I then pump low value interactions to those agents, then it's a waste of money and it means they won't be engaged with the role. So getting the metrics right can really help you focus and help your agent focus. So we talk a lot about equitable scorecards. So that's something that if I'm being measured, I agree to that measurement. I understand how I can influence it. So if something goes wrong, I can fix it. It's not a black box. And because I've agreed to be held accountable for it, I won't seek to undermine that scorecard either. And that's why we talk a lot about blended agent metrics. So the agent performance score from Qualtrics uses 3 key drivers, which is friendliness, knowledgeability, and listening skills. And that combination will help you identify those 2 true top performers. And of course, frontline feedback. What do your agents think of the organization? How would they rate your products and services? And finally, rethinking tech. Are you going completely into the cloud? Have you got any premise or hosted solutions right now? Do you need to think about moving away from them? How do you mitigate the business risk? Thinking about self-service and AI versus agent-led. So that's part of what I was talking about, that digital to human handoff. How do we make it seamless? How do we get, some customers would prefer to self-serve. So I think it's Deloitte has a really good report in their last big global contact center report that they produced that looked at the intersection, and it's to do with complexity of issue. The more complex the customer thinks their issue is, doesn't matter if they're right or not, but the more complicated they think it is, the more important it is to them to have human contact. So it's not really about speed, it's about complexity. And at low complexity, customers would actively avoid human contact. They just want to self-serve because they think it's simple. So I should be able to do it myself. So it's not as simple as call deflection and doing it on the cheap. It's much more than that. And as we think more about personalization, this is incredibly important. Customers love feeling that it's a personalized service, although they're not prepared to sacrifice efficiency for it. There's no good welcoming someone to a phone call with, oh, hi, Leonie Brown, thank you for being a platinum customer. We notice you've spent blah, 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 blah. Like, no, that's That's a sacrifice of efficiency. It's nice that you recognize me, but that's it. So when we think about personalization, obviously we want to identify high value customers, but we may also want to identify vulnerable customers. Depends on the industry that you're in, and ones where it's very important that we keep that revenue. So self-service and AI has a really important place, which is taking up some of the lift, particularly of low value, but also helping you identify more personally customers that need more help. And that's when you want to go agent-led interaction, because that's a value add, whether it's a highly empathetic agent looking after a vulnerable customer, or whether, again, it's one of your top performing agents who's looking after a VIP. It's important that we identify that the right person gets the right thing at the right time. And also we think about platforms versus point solutions. Sometimes you need to seek a balance, that having a huge grab bag of point solutions in the long term can lead to silos. Taking a platform, you may want to intersect with point solutions. So it's never all or nothing, it's just rethinking things. And of course, we want to de-silo as much as we can. So as you can see here, we have a ton of customers, of Qualtrics customers, using us to identify insight and drive their customer care. But what I love about particularly this slide is how many different industries they're in. And it's everything from healthcare to utilities, and we have MasterCard and American Express, banking, financial services, travel, you name it. That customer care has historically been really undervalued within an organization. So what we want to do is help you get a seat at the table, because your insights are what should be driving the rest of the organization and informing strategic decision making at the top level. So by enabling people to give frontline feedback, you can totally reimagine your contact center into becoming a loyalty driver of identifying those day-to-day little friction bits that will actually make life easier for a customer, but you need to fix them upstream. Having customer care chase around saying sorry a lot is good, but it's not very efficient. Solving the problems upstream is where you drive ultimate value. And so I wanted to talk about American Express just really quickly. They have $1 trillion in business worldwide, but they wanted to be recognized as an experience leader. They were seen as a pretty fossilized financial services provider, but they wanted to move from this transaction-based relationship to experience-based relationship. And so actually they test and run different types of feedback globally, worldwide, and they've been a Qualtrics customer for a long time. But the thing that they love to brag about is that they were really low in the JD Power customer satisfaction ratings. So it's kind of the equivalent of which, I would say, in EMEA. They're number one. And that was a journey, and it took a couple of years. But by taking those insights and acting upon them, they totally transformed people's relationship with American Express. So I just want to say a big thank you. I'm going to look in the chat now to see Q&A, but I'm also going to be going across to the Qualtrics virtual booth, so you can continue the conversation there. So I can see there's a couple of questions have come through in the chat, but talking about people's customer expectations. So this has come from the audience. Customer expectations, are they changing, and if so, how? So I'm just going to say one thing that's really changed is forgiveness. It's less about expectations, it's about forgiveness. And in March and April, we saw customers be incredibly forgiving, that they understood we're kind of all in this together. This is a really new situation, and being very sympathetic towards an agent who was clearly in the trenches, just going, I'm doing my best, just please hang on. And they were more forgiving of wait times. We have seen that significantly ebb away, because customers are now saying, this is normal now. You've had months to figure it out, and being much less forgiving. Their expectations, now panning back and thinking about the long run, are higher than they've ever been. Because for experience, you're not actually competing with your competitors. You're competing with everyone who provides an experience to that customer. So if you're a hotel group, You're not just competing with other hotel groups, you're also competing with the people who provide my travel, my utility company, my telephone company, everybody who gives me an experience. Customers expect more now than they ever did, but customer care is one of the biggest pivot points that you get to drive that. So yeah, over time, expectations are rising. So do we have anyone else? So thinking about customer care as a whole, not just contact centers. Thank you. I love this question. So for me, it's much more than that. Contact center is typically the tip of the spear here and the bulk of it. But thinking about things like field service. So do you have engineers on the road? Do you have, for example, in healthcare? This is really important, having clinicians on the road and in the field, healthcare visitors, domiciliary carers. Thinking about customer care as a whole and taking that as a holistic approach, contact center is a central plank of it, but it isn't all of it. And that's really important, that the more you get seen as a loyalty driver in the organization, the more you will get to influence the entire customer care strategy. And sometimes it's being able to fix things upstream because you have that insight from maybe customer care frontline. So next question, what role will voice channels play in customer service going forward? The tragicomedy is that the volume of calls incoming has never dropped. In fact, it's risen slightly, but the volume of inbound contacts has also risen massively. So as a proportion of all of the channels, calls have dropped, but the absolute numbers is they've exploded across all channels. So it's interesting that voice is still seen as the gold standard, if you will, if I've got a complicated problem and I want reassurance, I want to talk to a human being. We're starting to see a little bit of drip across to, like, some people prefer chat because they're going to get a transcript, but voice is absolutely central and will continue to be central. And particularly as we think about, I was talking about implicit versus explicit feedback, is voice analytics means you can get feedback from every single conversation instead of just the ones where you sent a feedback survey to a customer. What's really interesting and powerful is that voice analytics gives you a sense of the emotional trajectory. So somebody giving you a 3 out of 5 on a CSAT could be 2 totally different calls. One where the customer was already a fan of the organization and the agent let them down. So it would have been a 5, but now they've ended up as a 3. Or a customer who was super angry before they ever picked up the phone, and the agent did a heroic job, and it would have been a 1 out of 5, and they've made it get to a 3. So as we think about that, voice analytics is like a huge deal because it's whole sentiment and whole emotion. So you can get a lot more color and context to that really good snapshot at the end. The snapshot is just as important, but having both is pretty cool. So somebody says, it felt like customers were a bit more forgiving in the immediate aftermath of COVID. So as things might go back to how they were, how do we help care agents transition back to tougher interactions? Well, it's already happening. Think about that frontline feedback. So let agents tell you what interactions are causing most problems that they think are resolvable. That's the key factor. I know some organizations have invested heavily in empathy training, and that's been pretty effective because now, yeah, as you say, there's going to be some tougher interactions where there's less forgiveness. And also the proportion of vulnerable customers is changing because you've got this raft of financially vulnerable customers. So just like in any recession before it, but the weirdness here is that it's everywhere all the time. It's not one country and it's not one industry sector, it's everywhere. So actually, it's really important that we treat everything with humanity. And I think that's going to be a key driver over the next probably 12 months, is that you may have to have some very tough interactions, but if you handle those with empathy, you won't actually do so much damage. And it's understanding that agents are adding this huge core value of friendliness, listening skills, and knowledgeability. It's a blend of those that add up to credible and value add. And value add sometimes isn't a yes. it's a really clear no with some explanation of why. So I think we're just about at time. But yeah, I mean, hopefully I've given you some stuff to think about. Think about your agents. Think about do they get to tell you how things are going beyond your traditional employee 360? I mean, what do they think about the front line? What would they like to change? Thinking about digital to human, whether that's chatbots doing a lot of the lift of the automated kind of low level, where's my stuff, when does the store open, that kind of, low level repetitive lift, using a chatbot for a smooth handover to a human so they pass across a transcript and some context, thinking about what metrics you're using and why, and getting people to agree to be accountable because they understand it and can be clued up on how to fix it if things go wrong, all the way through to, what do people think about, working for you in the long run? Are they highly engaged? So I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you so much for spending the time with us in the session. And I hope you've enjoyed the Q&A. Thank you for some exciting questions. So I'm going to hop across now to the Qualtrics virtual booth if you want to join us over there. And Claire has already given you the link.